what are some things that you do outside of work? And a lot of people are like, I couldn't name one.
Welcome to The Career Flipper, a weekly podcast featuring career change stories from people around the world in a variety of industries about how they get from point A to B and all the twists and turns along the way. I'm Jenny Dempsey, your career flipping host. After more than a decade working in customer service and experience leadership, I found myself laid off and burnt out. Despite my experience, I couldn't land a new job, and I started to question my worth. Then a friend gave me an old table. I saw potential. I learned how to fix it up, and I found this new joy in giving the table a brand new chance at life. And it really sparked a passion for furniture flipping, which I now share on Instagram as a business, San Diego Furniture Flipper. Despite that, I was feeling alone and kind of insecure about my new path. I mean, who goes from the corporate tech world to covered in paint and sawdust in their garage? So I reached out to others I knew who have also flipped their careers, and hearing their stories inspired me and made me realize it's okay to change directions at any point in life. And that's why I started this podcast, to share these incredible journeys and offer support to anyone considering a career flip. So I hope you'll find something in each episode to help you on your path. Today, we'll chat with my colleague, Karli Williamson from Portland, Oregon. She went from working in event marketing management to becoming a career coach, founding her own business, The Guided Coaching Co. In our episode together, she shares her experiences with burnout and mental health in the corporate world, leading her to take a leave of absence and eventually find a new path. We discuss the difficulties of navigating work-related identity. On that note, let's dive into the episode. So great to have you on the Career Flipper with me. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. It's been a while.
I know it has been a while. Thank you so much for making the time. This podcast it's been so interesting because there is so much going on in the tech space right now, that we've worked in for so many years, and people are doing things differently. And you came to mind for me. I was like, ooh, I got to have Karli on. She's got to talk and tell her story, because you are just a vibrant, wonderful, beautiful human. And I'm just going to, just take it. What's your career flip story? Tell everybody.
I have been in tech for 10 years, something like that. And it was primarily in like event logistics, and then moved into event marketing and marketing in general. I started like contracting and consulting, and it was meant to be a brief thing, and was like, oh, I'll do this. I needed to kind of get out of where I was at. And then was like, I'll move into something else. Flash forward like a couple years later. But when I decided to contract, I started having like all of these people reach out to me that were so excited to work with me. That was very flattering, especially from coming from companies where I felt really undervalued. And, part of the company that I had left was because they wouldn't give me the like promotion and just respect and authority that I felt like I deserved. And so all of a sudden you have these companies coming to you that are like, we want to work with you. And I was like, great. And so, just like flattered. And I just said yes to like everyone. At the same time, my mental health was just like gradually declining. That's kind of where everything really came to a head. Like my mental health just like kept decreasing, depleting. I just was like really heading towards a crash, and I knew that. And so part of me was like, well, you have to work more to make more money because this crash is coming. And so we need to be prepared, because I didn't have paid time off. I was working for myself and paying my own health insurance. That's really where things went, is I just was like, I'm not where I want to be. And with work, with life, was just in a really rough place. Had to like end up taking a leave of absence, moving in with a friend because, mental health professionals were like, maybe don't be alone right now. So it was, it was a pretty intense situation. And it was like the best 5 weeks of my life. I was like, not be doing this job, event marketing. It was pretty intense. And I had like 12 clients. So I'm traveling constantly. I'm having to just like, you're managing all these tasks and project management and trying to be, strategize for different clients, like bouncing from call to call to be like, right, okay, we're working on this. And, I was working constantly. And so having those 5 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm myself again. I'm me. Like I found me. I told someone, I was like, it's like coming home to myself. And when I was done with it, it was meant to be 4 weeks. And I was like, I need an extra week. I know that I'm going to need a little bit more time and kind of ease back in. And the first call with a client was just rattling off this like list of things. And I sobbed afterward. I just was like, oh my God, all of that sounds miserable. I don't want to do any of that. Yeah. And so the wheels just kind of started turning. Like it was just this point where I was like, the thought of doing this job, like just seems like so, I like was having panic attacks, crying after having such a like lovely, I was doing yoga, I was like painting, I was like just being myself. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it took like a pretty rough time in my life to figure out what I wanted to do next and to know that I needed to be out of that. And that's like, yeah, that's really what led to me being like, okay, we need to try something completely different, kind of through like a lot of twisting and weaving had come to this like idea of like, I really enjoy supporting people, guiding people. I really enjoy like, being that contractor or consultant, not really in-house. And so I feel like clients sometimes will tell you a lot more and talk to you a lot more than they would if you were like really working with them and for them. And so I found myself talking through people's careers in my personal life and my professional life. And so after some time, I just thought like, maybe I can make a job out of this. And that's what led to me starting like my coaching company. It was a much needed shift. I just was like, I need to get out of this space and do something that really aligns with like my values and who I am.
And that's exactly how we became connected, because in the customer experience space and CX Accelerator, I saw you joined and I saw you were a career coach, and I was at the very early stages of my career flip trying to figure things out, pretty much in that solving stage. Like she seems like a great connection. And when we talked, and how to have these conversations around that are challenging, but they're like, things are so confusing and up in the air because you've been there. As much as hard as it is, like to have these like rock bottom moments where we're just the things that we did no longer work for us. And it sounds like maybe we're a little similar where we got like semi-retired people pleaser thing going on. We're like, yes to this. And suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, I bit off way more than I can chew and I want to do none of this. And realizing that and then making a change. Because I'm sure people too. I know people who don't, who are just stuck in that cycle of like work, sob, work, sob. And, they're really stuck in that. What was the moment where you were like, this can't work for me? Like what was kind of going through your mind around that time of what actually caused you to make that change, risky or not?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like, even just being like, I need to take, and it was a leave of absence. Like it was a mental health leave. That's like definitely what it was. And luckily I was working like with an agency at the time. And so I was able to pause and like pass things off. I think even just the fact that I had to do that was like, whoa, I had been like a hustler. Like I had been climbing the ladder, hustling, like, it was like on paper, very successful and like could be in like the prime of my career. I could have gone a lot of directions and continued to climb. But I think just the fact that I had to take that time off was pretty earth shattering to me. And then I think like, yeah, as I mentioned, that shift of coming back and having that, just the juxtaposition of being like, oh, I had this like very peaceful, very like I was in charge of myself. I could like, essentially I would be like, oh, I'm not feeling like doing this today. I can do this. And just like really learning to listen to myself and what I needed. And then realizing that moment of having that first call with someone who was a friend, who I considered a good friend, who I'd really like, not all clients really got the full story, but they had gotten the full story. And so to have someone who was a friend be like, okay, cool, you're back. Oh my God, I need help with all these things. I just was like, there's no space for me in this path. And that kind of like having those experiences back to back and having like literally the first person I talked to want so much of me was just earth shattering, like those first 2 days back. And I ended up giving notice to the agency and to clients like within a couple weeks from that. I just was like, I can't do it. And I had kind of been mulling over this idea of career coaching. And, I've been having these thoughts for a long time, which when I've talked to clients, and I guess I should say like what I coach on is helping people figure out what they want to do next. And sometimes that is a total career flip. Sometimes it's moving into different kinds of companies, different kinds of roles. Maybe it is moving up. A lot of times it's like, I'm going to quit my job and do something else. And I'm always like, yes, this is why I started doing this. Everyone quit their job and chase their dreams. But, I'd had like these thoughts. And one of the things that I've noticed with clients is like, it's a very common theme where you have this feeling of like, this isn't quite it. And so maybe you move up the ladder or you change companies or, in marketing, you change specialties or whatever. And you're like, well, maybe this is it then. And you just kind of keep having these, I started having conversations with like a chief of staff or like a HR professional, and was just kind of like trying to find this way. And then it just kind of clicked. And I talked to a couple of career coaches and I was like, yeah, this seems like I could do this. Yeah.
Making that space for you to be able to do that, carving that path out, was that tied to your identity? And then I feel like that's such a big part of the shift too, where you're like, I know this isn't right. I don't know if this resonates with you, but I was very much for many years like, this is all I'm good at. This is my worth. This work is my worth. If I'm not doing this, then I'm not anybody. And it sounds like bonkers, but having to kind of work through that in addition to all of the nitty gritty stuff of just your own health insurance or like, how do you get your next client? Or the basis of all this stuff is very much, it's a grieving process in a way. You go through all these different stages and it can get very, very heavy sometimes.
Yeah. That identity piece is so huge. I think that, especially in like Western culture and especially in the US, identity way more so than work. And I think once you kind of like find yourself again, it can make it easier to leave those things. But, so many of the clients that I work with, one of the things that I ask them is, what are some things that you do outside of work? And a lot of people are like, I couldn't name, like, I don't have anything. If I did have something, it would be this. And so then, one of the full weeks of that we work with each other on is really just like, let's work on your personal values. Like if you had the time, if you had the budget, and not even the time, but the energy, because when you're in these roles, even if you're not working very much, your energy is just zapped because you hate what you're doing. You feel stuck, you feel trapped. And so even, I worked with clients who were like, I'm really only working like 20 hours a week. And I couldn't tell you what I'm doing with the rest of my time because I'm just so miserable.
That's like so true. And to hear you say that, from the work that you do with your clients and how that is just so common. There was a business conference I was at recently, and the little lanyard, you can write your name and your company and whatever. So I wrote, consultant and furniture flipper. And I can tell you, here's a conference at a business conference. I think one or two people asked me about consulting. Everybody asked me about the flipping. People were pulling me aside and saying like, oh my gosh, I love that you do this because I love to do X, Y, and Z hobby. Like I'm an artist, or whatever. They're making things and they're like, but I never have the time. And I feel guilty, for taking that away from my job, and other things even too, like my family, or like, I should be doing this. I should. And they're like, I wish that I could do this. And it's like, yeah, me too. The only reason that I did it was because I hit that rock bottom and had no other choice and had to come back. And like you said, re-find my identity, who I am without this. And so you bringing that up is just like such a crucial piece to this. And I'm curious when you're working with clients, because I think a lot of the people listening to this show specifically are, working the full-time jobs. They're in that like sobbing stage. Let's just say that, or they're, maybe getting there, and it's scary to think about leaving something, especially in this market. How do you recommend people in that stage to slowly shift into something without giving everything up, without taking the huge leap right away?
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of the like homework assignments I'll give clients is 1 hour this week. Just like do something different, do something for yourself. that isn't, or maybe it is like sitting and watching TV if that's not a thing you normally do, going for a walk if that's not a thing you normally do. Just take 1 hour a week. And it sounds like not that much. You're like, oh, an hour. I'm sure I already do that. And then you'll find out you really don't. A really intentional time of like, I am going to do this very intentional thing and not like, oh, I had an hour free, so I cleaned my apartment or whatever it is. I think like that's a really good place to start, is just like take a bit of time to start finding that identity, because you're going to need, this could be a big shift and you're going to need that anchor. You're going to need those things to come back to. That, I would say, first and foremost is the most important. And then I would just start to like pay attention to like those moments that do give you energy, whether it's in your job or your personal life. What are you like Googling? What's your TikTok feed? Like, what are they? For me, if it were TikTok, they'd be like, you're going to be a stand-up comedian and a choreographer. So like, that's not a good example. Yes. I would love to do one of those things. But I think like, just start paying attention to those moments. I started my flip I had a running list of like things that gave me energy, things that made me feel really good. It helped in that sobbing stage to be like, I really do enjoy these pieces of it. And when I looked at that list, none of it had anything to do with event marketing. Parts that I really loved about it could be applied to a lot of different things. And so I think like those two pieces of paying attention to like, what is filling you up? What is bringing you joy? Whether it's like, one of the things for me was I was mentoring a new direct report and I loved it. I loved talking about her career. I loved like coaching her through new skills or interpersonal things. I even loved when I had to give her hard feedback because I felt like I walked her through it in a way that I hadn't experienced. And those had nothing to do with event marketing. And then just like that 1 hour a week and try and increase it gradually to even like, okay, now we're going to break this up. So it's 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, to just create that anchor for yourself that you will have to come back to, because your whole world is going to be rocked if you really flip. If you really flip this, like it's going to rock your whole world.
The small baby steps and how much realization we have of like, oh yeah, 10 minutes a day, that's easy. Oh, actually, no, that's really hard. And I'm not doing that. And I can't even do 1 minute. Just the realization to that is huge for years ago, for myself included. Wow. This is such, I feel like we could talk for hours on all of this. And I want people to be able to connect with you because you have so much to give.
You can follow me on LinkedIn. It's probably where I'm most active, talking about careers, talking about bridge jobs, which is kind of like a new phenomenon. You might know me from that viral barista post that made me get off the internet for a long time because it was much attention. Follow me on LinkedIn. If you are into weird hand-built ceramics, you can find me at Lumpy Pot Co. Or if you're looking for coaching, you can find me at guidedcoaching.co. But yeah, it's Karli Williamson, Karli. On LinkedIn, that's probably the best place.
Karli, thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Career Flipper. Make sure to connect with Karli using the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, which I really hope you did, please share it with a friend who could use some inspiration. Rate and review the show and hit that subscribe button for more flippin' stories like Karli's every Thursday. Your support helps me reach more career flippers and future flippers to be, spreading the love, support, and motivation we all need on this journey. To connect with me, just head over to thecareerflipper.com. Keep on your path, my friend. What's the best that could happen? Talk to you next week.